A Heartwarming Love Story, Part 1. A Meeting in the Snow. Snow fell heavily over South Station in Boston. Warm golden lights reflected across the wet streets while crowds hurried home before Christmas Eve. Emma Carter, 28 years old, dragged an old suitcase across the platform. She had just finished a brutal 12-hour shift at Massachusetts General Hospital. Her tired blue eyes carried both exhaustion and kindness. Emma worked as an emergency room nurse. Ever since her mother died from cancer years earlier, she had lived alone. Her father remarried and moved away to another state. Her world had become painfully small. The hospital, her tiny apartment, and long, lonely nights. As she rushed toward the last train to Cambridge, a powerful gust of wind scattered the papers in her hands across the station. Oh no! A man immediately knelt down to help her gather them. Here you go. Emma looked up. He appeared to be in his early 30s, tall, calm, with warm brown eyes. Snow covered the shoulders of his dark coat. Thank you. You're welcome, he replied with a soft smile. But I think you just missed your train. Emma turned around. The train doors were already closing. She sighed in defeat. That was the last one tonight. The man glanced at his watch. There's a cafe nearby that stays open all night. At least you won't freeze out here. Emma hesitated for a moment, but something about him made her feel strangely safe. I'm Daniel. Emma. That was the first time they met. Part 2. The Man with the Old Notebook. The cafe sat quietly along the old streets of Beacon Hill. Daniel ordered Emma a cup of hot chocolate. You're a nurse, right? He asked. How did you know? Your hospital badge is still clipped to your jacket. For the first time in weeks, Emma laughed. Daniel was a freelance architect who traveled frequently between Boston and New York for projects.
Remember that first
Throughout the
winter we
conversation,
spent here?
Emma noticed he constantly
How could I
carried an
forget?
old notebook.
This city
Every
looks
now and
best in
then,
the
he would
snow.
write something inside it. What do you keep writing? She finally asked. Daniel smiled gently. Things I never want to forget. Emma didn't ask any more questions. That night, they talked for nearly 3 hours about family, about heartbreak, about dreams they had buried long ago. Before they left, Daniel wrapped a cream-colored scarf around Emma's neck. You're freezing. What about you? I'll be fine. What Emma didn't know was that the scarf had been knitted by Daniel's mother before she passed away. Part 3. Unexpected Dates. Over the following months, Daniel began appearing unexpectedly outside Emma's hospital. Sometimes he brought coffee. Sometimes he simply waited for her after work in the rain. One evening, Emma asked him, "Don't you get tired of waiting for me?" Daniel looked at her quietly. Some people are worth waiting for. His words stopped her heart for a moment. Little by little, Emma allowed herself to love again. They walked beside the Charles River together, ate pizza after midnight, watched 4th of July fireworks from a rooftop in Boston. Emma never thought she could open her heart to someone again, but Daniel made her believe life could still be beautiful. Part 4. The Secret. Daniel hid. One night, Emma accidentally discovered medical documents inside Daniel's bag. Heart medication, test results, doctor reports. Daniel suffered from a hereditary heart condition. According to the doctors, he would likely need a heart transplant within a few years. Emma froze in shock. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel stayed silent for a long moment. Because I didn't want you falling in love with someone who might disappear someday. Tears filled Emma's eyes. You really think that would scare me away? Daniel turned his face aside. I just didn't want to become a burden. That night, Emma held him tightly for the first time. No matter what happens, she whispered, I'm not leaving. Part 5. A Proposal Under Red Maple Trees. Daniel took Emma to Vermont during peak autumn season. They rented a small cabin surrounded by red maple trees. That afternoon, crimson leaves drifted softly around them. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small ring box. Emma Carter, his voice trembled. I don't know how much time I have left, but if I could choose one person to love in this lifetime, he knelt before her. It would always be you. Emma burst into tears. Yes, she whispered. Of course, yes. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger beneath the burning red leaves. For one perfect moment, the world stood still. Part 6. The Storm. A year later, Daniel's condition worsened rapidly. He struggled to breathe, collapsed at work, returned to the hospital over and over again. Emma reduced her hours to care for him. Some nights, she stayed beside his hospital bed until sunrise. Daniel looked at her with guilt in his eyes. You deserve a better life than this. Emma shook her head. My best life is the one that has you in it. But then the worst happened. Daniel went into severe heart failure. He was immediately placed on the emergency transplant list. The wait could take months, and Daniel didn't have months left. Part 7. The Letter Inside the Notebook. One evening, while Daniel slept in the ICU, Emma opened his old notebook. Inside were hundreds of handwritten memories. The day they met at the station, the first time she laughed in the cafe, the first time she held his hand. Then she reached the final page. If someday I never wake up again, tell Emma meeting her was the most beautiful thing God ever gave me. Tears fell onto the paper. Emma lowered her head and sobbed. Part 8. A Christmas Miracle. On Christmas Eve, snow fell once again, just like the night they first met. Then the hospital phone rang. A matching donor heart had become available. Doctors rushed Daniel into surgery immediately. Emma waited outside the operating room for 8 endless hours. She clutched the old scarf tightly in her hands. Finally, the doors opened. The surgeon removed his mask. The surgery was successful. Emma broke down in tears. For the first time in months, she could finally breathe again. Part 9. A Wedding by the Ocean. The following summer, Daniel recovered beyond everyone's expectations. They held a small wedding beside the ocean in Cape Cod. Nothing extravagant, nothing glamorous, just close friends, family, and the sound of waves. Emma walked barefoot across the sand, wearing a simple white dress. Daniel looked at her with tears in his eyes. Even if I had another lifetime, his voice cracked, I would still find you at that train station. Emma laughed through her tears. And I'd still miss that train. Everyone around them laughed softly. The sunset painted the ocean gold. Daniel wrapped his arms around Emma while applause echoed along the shore. After all the fear, all the waiting, all the pain, love had finally won. Part 10. 5 years later. Emma stood outside South Station holding the hand of their little daughter, Lily. Daniel walked behind them carrying a Christmas tree. Lily looked up curiously. So this is where you and Dad first met? Emma smiled warmly. Yep. Daniel squeezed her hand. Because your mom missed her train. Lily giggled. Snowflakes drifted softly onto their shoulders. Emma leaned gently against Daniel. Some meetings seem accidental, but maybe they were always destiny. And sometimes, missing one train can lead you to the love of your entire life. The end. True love is not about meeting the perfect person at the perfect time. It's about choosing each other, even through fear, sickness, heartbreak, and uncertainty, and still holding on until the very end. Thank you for watching the video. Wish you always happiness and success in life. Please like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. We will produce many more great videos to create value for the community.